Hey, this is William Tincup and Ryan Larry. We have AC on today for the Inside the C-Suite. Can't wait to learn about his journey. These shows have been really inspirational. I didn't think that they would be. I thought that it would be kind of formulaic. When Ryan
You
and I
saying they're
first
going to be
had
boring?
no. I thought they'd be formulaic. I thought that we'd hear the same kind of journey each
Yeah,
each time that we went through this thing, and nothing could be farther
it's
from the truth.
it's very
Like
different, very different.
everything's been different. So AC, thank you so much for carving out time for us, and thank you for kind of sharing your journey to the C-suite. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now? So we'll start with the current.
Sure. So first of all, thank you guys for having me.
Sure.
It's a pleasure to be here. Right now, I am the CEO of a startup called HireLogic. And what we essentially do is we are bringing AI expertise to the human conversations that happens in interviewing and hiring, which is today largely an analog process. It's
Right.
filled with, you could be having a good day and an amazing interviewing day, or you could be having a horrible day, but the candidate would end up suffering. So what we're trying to do is we're saying, look, there's a lot of expertise that's available in systems. We are trying to bring a new level of expertise around the act of interviewing and creating hiring signals and insights, not to replace the person, not to tell you who to hire, but to help you make a better hiring decision. And that's what we're doing at HireLogic.
So that standardizes things, which is great. So you
Yes.
take the emotion,
Yeah,
the human emotion out of that, but also takes some of the bias out of that as well.
it does. And the way I like to think about it is the net benefit generally accrues to the candidate. And
Right.
so, I'll tell you a story, which is in running large P&L, smaller startups, we have spent enormous amounts of resources, money, people in recruiting people into the top of the hiring funnel.
Right.
Recruiters, inside, outside, advertising, all that. And as you think about what happens when a person comes into the organization as being vetted, and generally across the world, it sadly looks like this. I've got an interview coming up at 10. At 9:45, I'm printing the resume, or I'm looking at LinkedIn, thinking about that email I need to respond to, because people in their job functions are not professional interviewers, right?
Right.
And so if you're not having a great interviewing day, the candidate could be putting their best foot forward. They prepped, they're ready, they're speaking. But the person on the other side just fundamentally didn't do a structured good job, didn't take all the right notes and all that stuff. They came with their own biases. They heard what they wanted to hear, didn't the output wasn't consistent. And with HireLogic, we are actually acting as the guardrail. We're creating the insights, the signals. You as an interviewer always have the ability to add on to it. But the candidate, as long as they're prepped and they're doing their best, they will accrue the benefit of having HireLogic there.
Yeah. AC, so first off, I love HireLogic. I'll just start there. I've seen it. I've seen it a number of times. I've just seen your most recent updates, and it blows my mind every time. It's just I've been a fan since day one. But I want to take us way back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Tell us the story. Where did you start? What was your first job? How did you kick off your life into the world of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think actually it goes back to maybe when I was 7 years old. And I was born in a city called Calcutta, India.
Yep.
And I was born in the early 70s, and there was really, at the time, no grocery stores. It was a very old way of living, right? Nothing what the West had at the same time.
Right.
On a visit to London, where I had an uncle who lived there, I go to this place and there's elevators, there's malls, but I was enthralled with grocery stores because we were still at that time predominantly in India buying groceries in effectively a wet market, right?
Right.
Right.
And I see organization and carts and charts and money being transacted. I remember at that such a young age coming back and telling my parents, we have to open a grocery store. It's really important. And I think it was the beginning of me looking at unmet needs
Right.
and thinking about what can I do from a structural and a business perspective to create new value where there is no other option,
Right.
right? And learning from other industries, other tangential markets, and creating new solutions and offerings. It goes back to that far. Now, was my thinking that sophisticated at the time? No, but the intrinsic instinct that was there, I think, has stayed in me all the way till now. In terms of advancing into first jobs and stuff like that, look, I am a first generation immigrant, a huge believer in what I would define as the ideals of the United States, right? And coming from a I would say, a socialist system, and my state that I was born into was actually known as communist, and even to take it a step further, their acronym was CPIM. So it stood for Communist Party of India Marxist. Okay, they added the M to it. So 30 years of their rule, and having coming to a land where not just kind of freedom of expression, but the ability to sort of at speed create and add value was just remarkable. So as an immigrant, I went through higher education, and my first job was at Price Waterhouse, and this is even before Cooper's merged with Price Waterhouse to form
Right.
PwC. It was just PW at the time. It was wonderful because through consulting, I was exposed to many industries, many customers, lots of different problems. And my mind started to sort of turn around where could I have a more meaningful impact.
What was your specialty at PW?
I was a technologist. I was in technology
Okay.
consulting. So I've
So,
always been
right,
tech heavy ever since I was young, had a bend toward technology.
right,
And again, in the world of technology, there's hardware, software, and everything else in between. I like software. I really like the world of software. And I had an opportunity to work at a company called Siebel Systems
yeah, of course.
that was founded by Tom Siebel and Pat House and a whole bunch of guys that came from Oracle. And they were, I call it sort of the Navy SEALs of creating software that looks at very good discipline, amazingly well capable operators, smart people that they would bring in. And I was around a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, and I basically learned the business of software at Siebel. And that sort of stayed with me. I grew through the company, created at Siebel Systems loyalty management, which was
cool.
the first sort of product that handled points and loyalty rewards and tiers. And today it's being used at airlines and many different places. So I'm really proud of the impact I had there, but I wanted to create something for myself, and got together with a couple of other guys that worked with me at Siebel Systems, and we created a company called Clear Standards. And we raised venture capital, and Clear Standards was, and I think there's a theme here,
Yeah,
of being early in a market. So Clear
right,
Standards was a company that focused on looking at climate impact in 2009. So we were
wow,
looking at how do you look at a company's spend on energy, and energy serving as a proxy for carbon footprint, and how can you help businesses make better decisions about climate change, but considering economics and cost? Because what we learned in the industry is altruism is great, but altruism is even more effective when it's aligned with commercial needs that actually affects markets and earnings.
right,
So we built a fabulous product. In the process, worked with the World's Resources Institute. We created one of the largest libraries of carbon calculations for businesses across supply chains. And we ended up selling that company to SAP right at around 2010, when the world was sort of, Merrill Lynch was going under and banks were failing, the financial crisis was in full-blown mode, we were a good success story at that time. And it was wonderful because 60% of global GDP manufacturing runs on SAP products. So if we could go into that customer base and help them understand where energy is being used and how to use it better, we could fundamentally make a difference at a global level. So that was my first startup.
Two quick questions.
Sure.
Were you with Siebel when they were acquired? When they went through that process?
Yes. So the Oracle acquisition process.
Yes, that was brutal from what I heard.
Yeah.
So the other second question is, it seems with your company that Europe would have been really ahead. Well, the sale to SAP makes a lot of sense to me, because Europe's 20 years ahead of us in terms of climate, and understanding of climate and understanding of carbon footprint, etc. So SAP makes sense. I mean, anybody makes sense, but SAP in particular makes sense because of their base in Germany.
Yeah, it was, you're absolutely right, dead on. And what's interesting is Tom Siebel himself was going to be an investor in the last minute. We couldn't agree on terms.
Right.
And if you do the research and you do a look back, right around the time where we were selling to SAP, Tom had started C3, which is the company he runs today.
Right.
And there was a Bloomberg reporter that did an investigative report on how my influence on the founding of C3, looking back all those years ago. So, which was always kind of fun. It's a fun side story. But look, coming back to missed opportunities, I think one of the things I'll tell you is when we were at Siebel and I was doing quite well, there's, search engines were, of course, Google came out. And I got a call from a recruiter that said, hey, would you be interested in a senior product management executive role at this company called Google? And I said, a search engine? What am I going to do with
Hell no, I don't want that.
Search engine?
Terrible idea.
Yeah. So
crowded market.
Yeah. Missed that. Didn't take that.
I kind of feel like he's here talking to us today because he missed that. Otherwise, he'd be up in the stratosphere right now.
On his own island at this point.
The other fun one was Mark Benioff started Salesforce to compete against Siebel. And we had a user conference in Europe at Cannes right before the film festival. And I remember one of the most brilliant marketing tactics, guerrilla tactics I've seen at those times is Siebel customers would come out of their hotel and Mark Benioff had these cycle and auto rickshaws that had no software Salesforce logos that would take them from the hotel and take them to Siebel. And along the way, they would hear why cloud software is so much better. Right. And then Mark was recruiting. And so I actually had an email from Mark saying, hey, heard about you. Great job. Would you want to be interested in joining Salesforce? Didn't do that either.
Wow.
But those are kind of two interesting ones that I can speak of.
So question on that. So, okay, a lot of people listening to this show might be in that situation where they need to make a decision. It's a lot of entrepreneurs, people that strive to be leadership or grow into C-suite at some point.
Yeah.
When you're faced with that, I guess what I want to know is when you're faced with a decision like that, what goes into factoring? Am I leaving where I'm at now and going to this no-name company called Salesforce? Do I take a risk on this search engine thing? What goes through your mind to make that decision?
I think everyone's psychology is a little different in how they approach these types of situations. By nature, my risk propensity is high. So I was always looking to, if I left, I was going to go do something on my own. And that was kind of always in my subconscious. And so it's easier for me to say no to going to the next shiny object. That's my psychology. And look, I tell people that I have 3 simple scales to make decisions on. It's, and it comes down to 3 things: your individual sheer aptitude, That means how smart you are and how capable you are. That's, on a scale of 0 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
Your risk propensity out of 0 to 10, and how hard do you want to work out of
Okay.
0 to 10. And when I mean work, I mean, are you going to stay up? Are you going to put in 60 hours a week or not?
Right.
Now, if you take that slider on each three and you move it all the way to the right and make it 10, 10, 10, you get Elon Musk.
Right.
Very intelligent, big risk, and will outwork most people. So I think when I look at myself, we have our own calibration of where we are in those scales, and that is a big factor in making some of these decisions.
And at different points in your life, you slide those things back and forth.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
just had a kid. Okay, work-life balance is more important to you, so you slide that one back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, in the United States, we've talked about healthcare and healthcare being made available to everybody and all that sort of stuff. I actually, as a capitalist, believe that universal healthcare done well in the U.S. is a strategic advantage
Yep.
to spur innovation and growth. Because one of the reasons people don't take risk is they've got a family member, they have a spouse, they have a child, they have things that are kind of tethering them into one environment where they can't take the risk. And I
Right.
think if we solve that, we'll actually enable more innovation. More people will take more risk.
So I've my thought on that, and it's way off. So bear with me. Is the government just buys all the insurance companies? It consolidates all the insurance companies into one and spits it off as a public again, but now in concert with standardized healthcare.
Yeah, I mean,
So
look,
now that we're not fighting them,
yeah,
now we're partners with them. Because
I've actually heard variations of this and
yes,
from others, and I think I don't know what
I
the
don't
right
either.
answer is, right? I mean, I have to be. I can tell you in software what what I would do, but
100%.
this is not my domain. But my take is, as a society, we should be asking for better,
Oh,
more healthcare security. I think
well,
it's good
like
for the country.
think about it. We're running up on a presidential election. What are we talking about? We're talking about immigration,
Yeah.
which as a country we've been immigrating. We've been hosting immigrants for 400 years since 1620.
Yeah.
So why are we talking about immigration? Like, why aren't we
Yeah.
talking about, more importantly, why are we talking about better health care for everyone, for every single person? Because the PAC, the PACs, the super PACs for pharma and for healthcare and for insurance dominate. They're almost as they're almost as good, bad as the NRA and big tobacco. Those three forces, you can't change those three forces. So, like, for me,
Yeah.
just buy them all. Just literally, just go into more debt, buy them, and then consolidate all of that and make it and spit it out as private. But when you just spit it out as private, it's universal health care.
Yeah, we have to get better. There's no question. Whether it's that or some other mechanism, it's
Some other mechanism. It's just we have to do that. What was after Clear?
so after Clear Standards, I started a company called Any Presence, which is essentially iPhone had just come out,
Yep.
and other versions were coming out, and I looked at the potential of iPhones in the business use case, and I thought, okay, BlackBerry is going to be dead. I saw that. And so from a
I think they
software,
saw that when I started it.
Yeah.
yeah, from
Yeah.
a software perspective, I thought, okay, we are going to be putting more information at the tips of businesses and decision makers and consumers than ever before. The speed just changed. Okay. And Any Presence, my idea was, how do we take data that's sitting within companies and give the right amount of it made available to these mobile devices? Because you don't want to take everything and pull it up, right? Not every
Right.
use case. And so we created a company that would basically organize and create objects and create a middle tier that would serve up the data and made it optimized for mobile consumption. And
Oh,
so
that's
that
cool.
was what Any Presence did.
Was it in the context of like sales? You're about to go into a sales meeting and then it pulls data. This is the last
Precisely.
time you talked to them. This was the
Precisely.
conversation. Okay.
Precisely.
Oh,
So
sweet.
we had customers, amazing customers from hospitals. We had for apps that they were building, pulling in health data. We
Right.
had Brooks Brothers in retail. We had MasterCard in financial services. These are just amazingly tier Fortune 500 companies that were using AnyPresence at the time.
So Clear and Annie, you again that theme of an unmet need. So there was an unmet need. You looked at the marketplace and said, okay, here's a hole. Let's go figure out the best solution for that hole.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
And
So what?
the other
Yeah, go
theme
ahead.
that emerges, and even in what I'm doing at HireLogic, is um, I for whatever reason don't like to build a better mousetrap. I prefer greenfield opportunities,
Right.
and it has its downsides, which is nothing else. There's no real substitute. I'm not going in and saying this is a better CRM, this is a better
Right.
applicant tracking system. When I go into a customer, there is no other interviewing tool that does what we do. So
Right.
the awareness in those markets becomes very challenging because,
Right.
I'm competing for dollars that have not been budgeted.
Right.
So I must prove incredible efficiency, and those products have to have amazing value for a customer to say, this never existed, never in our plans, but boy, we piloted this, we loved it, and we're going to put money into it. So that's a very interesting way of building startups, which is greenfield.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm gonna steal one of your questions here about how do you surround yourself or who thrives around you, AC. What I'm really interested in here is you're creating categories, you're creating a product,
Yeah,
greenfield, where you're competing for dollars, like you said, that don't exist. That's a really hard thing to do.
very hard.
Not a lot of companies thrive at that. So, how do you build your team, right? How do you build your story? How do you build your team around you that can go in and sell something that's not there?
Yeah,
Right.
that's a great question. And look, I always tell people that we can plan and strategize for everything, but nature and luck always gets a vote.
Right.
And
True.
I have been lucky in my life of working with a network and a group of people that have a mindset of taking risk. Because when you're building a team, chasing a greenfield opportunity, creating a net new category, you need to have people who are very, very thick-skinned. They can take a whole lot of no's. They will get a brunt of resistance. Investors will not like it because there's no clear path to revenue. There's a big market opportunity because think about it. If HireLogic does well, all interviews all over the world in every language, it's a pretty big market.
Right.
Now, I need to go prove that I can go do this. So coming back to your question, I surround myself with people, number one, that have a very high propensity for risk, very thick skin, and an ability to kind of weather storms, and people that I don't have to manage.
Right.
What I mean by that is they themselves must be entrepreneurial.
Self-starters. Yeah.
Because you're not going to survive by me sort of going up to you and kind of leading you through and creating a lot of a culture of, hey, let's do it. The convention doesn't work. Here,
Right.
it's very much small, tactical, brute force, a lot of hand-to-hand combat. And that takes a different type of person.
Why do you think that investors, you've dealt with investors your whole career, so I'm always curious about this. The VCs and even Ps to some degree, they don't like new categories, but they love new categories.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Yeah.
crazy to me. It's like,
It is.
okay, so what's been your experience with that?
My experience is this, and to be blunt, you can look at WeWork, you can look
Yeah.
at Theranos, and you can look at all. I mean, the smartest of VCs have made the stupidest bets.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
There's no question. There's enough data that supports that.
Full stop.
What I find very, very interesting is I find that investors typically have a herd mindset. There's a very small percentage, like 1%, that is so enamored with the idea that will bet the farm on it. And once they do, others pile into it.
Right.
So there's a bit of a herd mentality among investors.
Yeah.
In new categories, it's especially challenging because they're not operators, they're finance guys, right?
That's
And
right.
what I tell people is it's great to have VCs that have experience in investing and had successful exits because they recognize patterns. There's no question. Pattern recognition is what they do. Having said that, make no mistake, every single day you have to meet a customer's need. You have to go build that better product. You have to differentiate and build your own moat. They will not be able to help.
So, quick question, real quick. If pattern recognition is what they do and do well, which is because I agree with that premise, wouldn't AI do a better job of that?
I would think so. Absolutely. And by the way, I don't think we're far from it.
Okay. All right.
But here's my simple take. If you look at large language models, okay, you can create a poem about roses in Wordsworth's tone and it'll in the form of Wordsworth. You can take with the paintings behind you and get that done. But when you apply it to value and business, I mean, I don't know if you guys have played with Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft Teams. Like you do a Teams call and ask Copilot to summarize it. It's okay.
Right.
If it's a job interview, compare Copilot to HireLogic. I mean, we crush it. It's not even close. My point is, AI is being specialized. We are not far from someone saying, hey, I think we can create a model that will actually make better venture investments than people.
Right.
But we can pick up the patterns. We can look at the business and make a better prediction. Absolutely. I think that's coming.
So we're touching on funding. Let's maybe go a little deeper here.
Yeah.
How does an entrepreneur in a startup know it's time to get funding, or how do they know it's time to run away?
Yeah.
Good question.
That's a burning question we always get.
Yeah, no. I actually have a pretty well thought answer for that. There are plenty of examples where companies did not get out at the right time, and they end up in the land of the walking dead. Okay, or sometimes the walking wounded. I'll give you a couple of examples. If you guys recall, go back to kind of iPad generation 1. One of the coolest products or apps for the iPad was Flipboard.
Yep.
And if you recall, kind of going through magazines, we're like, wow, this is a whole awesome new experience. Flipboard got to a very nice critical mass, had amazing offers to get out, but didn't take it, but did not also have a clear strategy of dominating. Okay. Now, another interesting story. I sold my company to SAP. I'm in Palo Alto, spending a bunch of time over there, and I see this weird-looking electric convertible called Tesla. Tesla One, a weird-looking electric, barely had a range of 50 miles, I think. I said, who would buy this? Who would buy? No one was buying these Tesla. Few people. The guy goes on to create what is Tesla today. Now, because of the market opportunity and the size as compared to Flipboard and a vision to get there, he decides to get the capital, do whatever it takes to build that company. I think a company's got to know when it's time to harvest based on 3 factors: macroeconomic circumstances. So we are going through a period right now where VC investment is down. If you're not doing large language models and some other related stuff, VC investment is down. So if you get a buyout offer now, I would say you should probably consider it. Because this is it's a macroeconomic reason. Number two, you look at the landscape, and if you don't think that you've got a brilliant step, a ladder step to the next big market opportunity to go from a crappy convertible to a world dominating electric car, it's time to exit. Take the best offer. And I think when you get into this mode of taking more capital, the pressure and the ceiling to get out to satisfy everyone's return on investment becomes so astronomically high that, pardon my words, people make shit up.
Oh yeah.
And then you get a WeWork.
Right. So let's go after what was any? What was their next step after that?
We did a company called Nanoscale, which was developer software. And what Nanoscale basically did is it looked at a point in time when microservice-based architectures were coming in. So we went from monolithic to big microservices. Be very honest with you, some of my best startups have come from inspirations. I was inspired by Netflix. I was inspired by the software architecture of Netflix. And when I looked at how these guys beautifully decompose things into smaller services that scaled on its own and were only waking up when it needed to, I thought was amazing. And we felt like we could create a mechanism for the average developer that couldn't work at Netflix because they weren't an A+ developer, they were a B or a C+ developer, but give them a platform to build microservices like Netflix. That was the idea. So we created a company called Nanoscale, built a platform. It was technically incredibly tough because it was polyglot. What I mean by that is you could be a developer in Python, Java, C. It didn't matter the language. You could bring your own code and we would run it. And we could create these atomic services and help you stitch them together and get them deployed. We sold that company to Tibco in 2018, I believe.
What do you think? What do you think about AI writing code or generative AI?
Yeah, look, I think it's very interesting. I was at a fireside chat yesterday with the CEO of Cognizant, and big business process outsourcing. We do software development elsewhere, so they could go into a company and say, "Hey, I'm going to take so much of your cost out because I'll just build it somewhere else." Right. I think what's happening with code and AI is the short answer is code was already being abstracted. So when I graduated, I was writing COBOL and Fortran, and we got into object-oriented layers because abstraction was already happening. Now we've gone from abstraction to full authoring of entire code bases. And I think if you just follow it, I think the curve becomes a hockey stick, becomes nonlinear, and it explodes and it will write itself. But I think the market impact of that is I think we're going to see companies not outsource, but insource now. So in other words, bring some of those expertise back. So go back to your creative people, people who know your business, your industry, and customers, and now give them the AI tools to create the code themselves. So I think the definition of a classical developer was already sort of changing and now will dissipate into what I think Gartner calls them citizen developers, using low code, no code mechanisms of creating products.
Will that be as good, the end product, will that be as good as having an A+ developer hands-on building this?
Yeah, I think today the answer is no, but I think that changes in 5 years.
Yeah.
Just if you just follow the pace with which it's changing.
Yeah.
Because those that know your business or know the customer, right?
Yeah.
They just want to know, they'll know what they want.
Yeah.
I want it to do this. And so go build this. They don't need to know the ones and zeros in any of the code. They don't need to know how it relates to whatever else. Just like, I want it to do this.
Yeah.
So you need inquisitive people, getting back to your scale of people that have the acuity. You've got to have smart people. I think you
Yeah,
said it a
and
little
look,
bit more.
I think the way that we educate and train from an academic standpoint is
Right.
changing. So I'm on the board of trustees at a major public university in the Washington D.C. area called George Mason, pretty big
Yeah, of course.
university. We have just created a co-innovation program that we're investing hundreds of millions of dollars into, that brings together students from arts, sciences, legal to collaborate.
Smart.
Because the problem of I need engineers to think like engineers is changing.
No, you
Building
need
tools
Yeah.
is not the hard part. Now let's and therein lies the opportunity. And I'm very hopeful that the next
you need
generation,
philosophy majors
yeah,
and humanity majors. Yeah,
and I think the world will be better for it. And I
yeah.
think we as a
Yeah.
country will be better for it.
You know, I gotta say, William, you bring this conversation up a lot, but these last probably half a dozen episodes that we've done have all led to this
Yeah.
of we need more philosophy and socialism, not socialism, sorry, social
Sociology.
worker,
Yeah.
sociology, right?
It's just
And the world,
humanities. Anybody that
humanities, right? And the world is going to be a better place for it, and we're going to have a much better end result, which is really interesting because AC, I've got three girls, all in school.
Yep.
Oldest is 16, youngest is 10, and they all have their challenges education wise, and they do really well in school. But I'm looking at what they're learning, and it's what I learned,
Yep.
35, 40 years ago, right? And it's the same thing. It hasn't changed. They're not teaching critical thinking. They're not having them think differently.
Yep.
It's here's the worksheet, do the work.
Yeah.
I mean, the
uh-huh.
math is different, right? Like you no longer do 5 plus 5, it's 5 plus 2 minus 3. It's like
Yeah.
all that crazy stuff,
Sure.
but they're not actually teaching any differently.
Yeah.
So the long way to get to the question is from you brought up education, you're making these changes at the university. How do we bring this into lower education, into primary and secondary?
I think two things. I think um, we need leaders, number one, that
Yep.
share that mindset, and we need these leaders to sort of lay out the value of what happens when we make that investment. I 100% agree that the way that we're teaching people is now antiquated. And I think AI will disrupt a good chunk of that for reasons you guys already know.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that we as a country need to look at curriculum in a more integrated way.
Right.
And so not so much of like, here's an equation, but let's apply this equation to music. Let's apply this to art. Let's apply this to creating a movie and a background. That sort of almost sort of case-based teaching is required, I think, earlier and earlier. The other thing, a pet peeve of mine is coming from the sciences, physics is very interesting because if you talk to a high school graduate and you ask them, what do you know of quantum mechanics? They will say almost nothing because our
Mm-hmm.
curriculum is still steeped in classical physics when we know by evidence that the future is quantum. For God's sakes, we're creating quantum computers.
Sorry.
Why are we
Right.
not teaching the fundamentals of this much earlier? And so my bigger point is we need to rethink the curriculum, make it more integrated and modernize it, and
Yeah.
embrace the AI. Let's not worry about kids cheating. How do we use it to help make
Right.
them better?
Well, teaching kids how to ask questions, getting them curious, like inspiring that curiosity. Like right now, we stifle curiosity
Yeah.
because we want them to memorize shit.
True.
It's like memorize. Here's all the major battles in the Civil War. When did they happen, and where was it, and how many people died? It's like, well, first of all, I don't need to know that data. That data exists. I can ask Siri. So first of all, the memorization. But it's like we don't inspire them to go, what if?
Yeah.
and those types of
So
things. So
I'll give you an example in my life. I met a young person, and I've studied a lot of quantum mechanics and quantum computing. We were talking about the concept of entanglement, that I move a photon here, and thousands of miles away, another photon moves in the other direction. They're entangled,
that's right.
right?
That's right.
Oh, and is it faster than speed of light? Very interesting conversations going on. And the person said to me, he goes, I lost someone really close to me, a friend or a relative, I think. And I feel sometimes they're connected to me somehow. I feel this, it's a feeling. I don't know, is something in my mind? Or do you think, um, maybe we're entangled in different
There's
states, not the way we, and I looked at this person, I said, that is a phenomenal question.
yes.
Instead of calling you crazy, go see a psychologist, it's all in your mind. Let's
No.
think about that from a quantum perspective.
Right.
Could entanglement happen beyond the way that we think about it?
Oh, it's brilliant. That's absolutely
And that's
brilliant.
an example of getting people to think differently.
Right.
Right.
So last question for me is advice that you would give yourself when you were coming out of college. Now what you know,
Yeah.
all the stuff, what would you tell yourself coming out of college?
Boy, I think I would tell myself to probably travel more and meet more people and relax. I think my biggest um, issue is I am way too intense and criticize myself. I would embrace travel, embrace people more, and just relax more to enjoy the moment. I don't think if I look back in my life, I don't think I enjoyed the moments as much as I could have and should have. That's what I would tell myself.
Oh. AC, this has been an amazing conversation. You're doing fantastic work in our industry. You've done it outside the industry. We really appreciate the time here. If you're still watching, you're still listening, of course, subscribe, love us everywhere. See us out on the circuit somewhere. Come and say hello. And AC, we see you. We want to have you sit down and grab a beer or something. It's a great conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, AC.